You all good to go? Great. Thank you very much for joining us here today at the Globe Conference. Of course, we are on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and I want to thank Ravi Kahlon, Minister, for joining me here today to talk about what I believe is an exciting change in our approach to addressing climate change and dealing with the challenges we face, not just here in British Columbia, but indeed globally. We've all learned a hard lesson over the past couple of years as we've seen unprecedented weather events, the heat dome, the atmospheric river, wildfire seasons that have succeeded each other as being the worst ever, and of course flooding when we're not on fire. All of these impacts on British Columbia are apparent to all who live here, and indeed all of those around us. I hear regularly from the Governor of Washington concerned about smoke filtering down from the south, from British Columbia when the fire season begins, and then smoke moving up from California a little bit later and a little bit longer as the fire season persists there. These are signals and warnings to all of us that we need to do better. We need to ensure that we're taking every step we can to reduce our emission profile here in British Columbia as part of a national strategy, and also ensuring, of course, that there are multilateral agreements around the globe to ensure that we can take advantage of our competitive opportunities to help the world, not just here in British Columbia, but indeed in the global marketplace. Of course, our economy has come through COVID-19 very effectively, and that's a direct result of our small and medium enterprises and our workforce and those who have been prepared to take the risks and ride out what has been an unprecedented time. Although these complex problems seemed intractable at the beginning, 2 years on now with respect to COVID-19, we find ourselves in a very positive position in terms of employment, in terms of investment opportunities from the private sector, and of course a vibrant public sector that has learned how to transform itself and be innovative to meet the challenges of our time in within the constraints, of course, of COVID-19. So as a first step towards addressing some of these complex problems, I want to focus on the imperative of ensuring that we do everything we can to put some characteristics around our hydrogen strategy. We, of course, were the first province in the country to have a hydrogen strategy, and it's appropriate that today at the Globe Conference we announced the creation of the BC Hydrogen Office, which will be a standalone hydrogen group within government to provide one-stop shopping for those who want to invest in British Columbia, to take advantage of our competitive pieces here, whether it be access to natural gas, access to clean electricity, and a range of other innovations that we have at our disposal here that the sector, those who want to invest in hydrogen, have been looking at for some time. The creation of the office will allow us to create a regulatory framework that currently does not exist, and we're hopeful that British Columbia will be leaders in the country in developing that framework so that those who want to invest here understand the guideposts, understand the challenges, and of course the opportunities. Minister Kahlon will talk a little bit about how he and Minister Bruce Ralston will collaborate between our energy sector and our jobs and innovation sector within government to make the office work. But in essence, it's streamlining the decision-making processes, it's streamlining permitting to make sure, of course, we're protecting the public interest, which is the objective and obligation of government, but doing so in a way that will provide one-stop shopping for those who want to invest here to assist us in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It's our expectation that we will be able to reduce 30% of our emissions by 2050 just through the development of our hydrogen strategy. That's 30% more than we would have been able to do otherwise, but we still have an awful lot of work to do. Minister Heyman is charged with managing that going forward. Our targets of 2030, our targets of 2050 are not only transparent and available for all to see, but we're accountable for those in the legislature at various points throughout the year. And I'm very proud of the work that we have done to create one of the most dynamic climate plans on the continent and indeed in some instances around the world. The BC Hydrogen Office will, of course, aid projects and coordinate their proposals to make sure that we're stacking things up and we're doing it in a way that allows us to use our competitive advantages. We certainly currently have a surplus of clean, green electricity, but as we electrify our economy further, we're going to see a requirement for more clean energy, and that, again, is an advantage we have here in British Columbia because of our clean tech sector. Our history of using hydrogen fuel cells and other battery technologies, again, puts British Columbia in an enviable place as we build on our strong climate policies, our proximity to critical markets, and, of course, our highly skilled workforce. So with that, I'll ask Minister Kahlon to take the lead in terms of talking about our clean energy powerhouse that we are here in British Columbia, and also how our BC, Stronger BC economic plan fits in to the hydrogen strategy.
Great. Thank you so much, Premier, and thank you for holding up the Stronger BC Economic Plan. It's my pleasure to be here on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam Nations. It's wonderful to be here for this exciting announcement. The BC Hydrogen Office will do great work to help support the BC clean energy innovators. It will build on British Columbia's well-deserved global reputation for clean energy and climate leadership. It's also a key component of our larger strategy that's in place to grow BC's economy for the long term. Right now, BC's economic recovery plan is working well. BC leads Canada's recovery across the country. We're seeing wages that are rising. There are more jobs right now than there were before the pandemic. In the last year, saw the largest number of people come to British Columbia in over 28 years. We have come a long way. But we also know that there is so much more work to do. That's why Premier's asked me to work with British Columbians to build on our success for a long-term economic plan for this province. Last month, Premier and I released the Stronger BC Economic Plan. The plan sets out two big long-term goals for the economy: inclusive and clean growth, and 6 missions that will help us get there. British Columbia's hydrogen strategy is a key pillar in that plan. Hydrogen development helps BC meet our climate change commitments, it fosters innovation in BC's economy, and it positions BC as a leader in environmental and social responsibility, and it builds more resilient communities. It'll bring additional investments to British Columbia and will open up markets around the world for BC products and innovations. In short, hydrogen development is an answer to the challenge the Stronger BC Economic Plan puts forward: to build a more innovative, inclusive, and sustainable economy that works for everyone, an economy that works for all British Columbians. That's why the Stronger BC Economic Plan is all about. That's what today's announcement helps achieve, and that's why I'm so happy to be here. And I want to thank you, and I think the Premier will take some questions.
We do have some media in the room here, and we have media on the phone line, so just as a reminder, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will get 1 question and 1 follow-up today. Does anybody in the room have questions? You can just identify yourself.
Benoit Ferradini from Radio Canada. What will be the budget of this new office?
I'm looking at my Deputy Minister. So we can get back to you on that question, but I think in giving you an answer to the question of what's the government's commitment to this undertaking, it's significant. We believe that we have tremendous opportunities in the hydrogen sector. We're well placed geographically. We have the technologies already in place, the feedstock already here in abundance, and there's significant demand internationally for hydrogen breakthroughs, and we're well poised here in British Columbia to do that. So we will be putting significant resources into the hydrogen, BC Hydrogen Office, working with the federal government, working with municipalities to ensure that we can streamline these processes. But other than the 10 full-time employees that are on it right now, it will be growing out as demand grows, and we're expecting that to be significant.
Second question. Can you give us examples of what progresses have been made since last year's announcement?
Well, the fact that we've decided to pull this office together, there is no regulatory regime in place for the development and distribution of hydrogen. So that means we have to build that from the ground up. We're well positioned to do that. We were world leaders in environmental, well, continent leaders in environmental assessment, putting in place processes and structures so that industry could have a quick answer to their investment calls. Yes or no is desirable in the investment community. Don't drag this out. Make it as quickly as possible. Here's our proposal. What do you think? So we're building that out now based on the successes we've had in other sectors. So we have a number of companies lined up. We'll have more to say literally in the weeks ahead about those who are prepared to make significant investments. We're not in a position to do that today. We wanted to get the office launched. We wanted to make sure that those who want to invest in British Columbia, want to invest in hydrogen, can see the progress we've made in terms of streamlining that process for them so that we can maximize the benefit to British Columbians.
Minister Kahlon.
I'll just add that BC was one of the first provinces to actually launch a hydrogen strategy last year. Since then, since the strategy was launched, we've seen over 40 proposals come forward to British Columbia. That's about $4.8 billion of potential investments, and that's why this office is going to be critically important, because since July 2021, seeing 40 investments come forward, potential investments, we expect a lot more, and that's why this team is being pulled together, so we can ensure that the office can help these proponents finally make a financial investment here in British Columbia, support them with the regulatory process, support them with talking to different levels of government, working with Indigenous communities. It's going to go a long way to ensure that these investments land here in British Columbia.
Next question, please identify yourself.
Nick Wells, Canadian Press. BC's previously tried to develop a hydrogen plan with the hydrogen highway. I think it was about 15 years ago. What makes this plan different?
Well, when we brought forward, the former government brought forward the hydrogen highway, it was tied to the 2010 Winter Olympics. There was hydrogen buses running back and forth to Whistler. The challenge there was feedstock. The challenge was production of hydrogen. We've come miles since then, or kilometers, depending on how you want to measure. And now the challenge is, how do we meet the demand? So when the hydrogen highway discussions were underway, I think it's probably closer to 15 years ago now, the challenge was absence of feedstock to keep infrastructure moving, to develop it out. Now the demand for that feedstock is through the roof internationally. The disruptions, of course, in Ukraine make the international energy markets even more unstable. We've seen that at the pumps for regular folks, but we're also seeing it in futures for natural gas, for other carbon-based fuel solutions. Focusing on hydrogen is in demand in almost every community on the planet because it is a safe, effective way to reduce emissions and to do so in a practical way over the time we have available to meet our targets, not just here in British Columbia, but internationally. So the difference between then and now is then it was novel, today it's an imperative.
We are now going to take questions. Oh, sorry, Nick. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, follow up just on a different matter, but kind of tied to this. I've spoken to several regional districts who have been critical about a lack of funding from Emergency Management BC, as well as criticism of the EMBC legislation. I know the legislation is changing in the fall,
yeah,
but can you talk, I guess, just broadly about these issues that these regional districts are having with lack of funding and what they say is kind of not a proactive plan, more a reactive plan?
Well, it's interesting you said regional districts, you didn't say municipal governments, because we have a very, and I don't want to disparage regional districts in that comment, but we have been working with municipal governments who have more capacity to manage these challenges. I think of Abbotsford, for example, meeting with Mayor Henry Braun just last week. Very grateful that we have in place, this is not a thank you to any particular government, but that Emergency Management BC has in place infrastructure and capacity to help municipalities in these difficult times. And you will also know that EMBC, our wildfire service, and other emergency personnel have been stretched significantly over the past 5 years, whether it's been record-breaking fires or historic floods. So I know that most municipalities understand and recognize that the flow of disaster relief funding is been slowed largely because there's currently an 80-20 ratio of 80% of resources will come from senior orders of government and 20% falls to local government. Regional districts do not have the tax base or the capacity to take up that 20%. We acknowledge that. We recognize it. Minister Farnworth is working on reducing that ratio so that regional districts will have some sense that there's hope. Otherwise, they're underwater, and I don't mean to use a bad metaphor there, but the system that was in place when we arrived was paper-based, first of all. We've now transformed it so it's now electronic, which seems novel in 2022, but literally 5 years ago, when we were dealing with displaced people as a result of fires, we were using paper-based systems to track them, which is quite frankly ridiculous in this day and age. We've resolved that. We now have to make sure that the funding formula, which existed over time, is modernized so that it can meet the realities of regional districts and municipal governments. And I think we're on the right track, and I'm confident that when the legislation comes forward in the fall, it will be met with support from municipal governments.
Going to the phone lines, Rob Shaw, Check News.
Well, hey, Premier. I just want to, there's an Angus Reid poll out today showing you continue to be one of the most popular premiers in Canada. Your party has pretty good voter support, like in the past, but on housing affordability, 88% of people polled think the province is doing a poor or very poor job. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. It seems to be a consistent and huge issue. What do you make of the voter sentiment there?
Well, I think it speaks to the reality of communities, the reality of people, and the complexity of the issue. Well, Rob, you've been covering this for a long time. I don't want to date you, but you've been following these issues through successive governments, and you know that the challenge just didn't arrive yesterday. It has been growing over time. We put in place 30 different components of a plan to address housing affordability, making sure that we're building more rental stock, making sure that rather than having the development community building one-bedroom apartments, we're building family-sized units of 2 and 3 bedrooms. So transforming the stock, the housing stock, is a challenge, and it's not done by government, it's done by the development community. That has to be done in a way that's mutually beneficial to communities through their official community plans, as well as what the development community can bear in terms of holding on to property for a period of time until they get those approvals. So there's a bunch of pieces in play, and I'm not surprised that the population through polling is expressing concern, because I hear that in my constituency office every day, which is the best polling firm I've ever seen, people writing and phoning in. So I acknowledge there's a problem, and I also acknowledge that we have more work to do. But we have taken significant strides to address these issues, and despite those good efforts, we're constrained by water on most sides, mountains on the other side. Land is at a premium. It's extremely expensive to build in British Columbia as a result of that. So we're trying to find ways to reduce the cost of the supply and expand it as fast as we can. But I'll also acknowledge the good news in the polling, Rob. Thanks for you focusing on that at the start. So I'll take the positive today, and I'll continue to work on the negative.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Sure, thanks. Your government announced this morning a sector-wide review of BC's post-secondary institutions and the block funding and what it called inequities for some post-secondary institutions. And you appointed Don Wright, your former deputy, to oversee this. And I just kind of wondered if you have is there a larger problem in your mind about what's going on at post-secondary institutions right now, and that necessitates the kind of need for a review like this, and maybe it kind of bleeds over into the sort of economic and future economic and job issues that you've been talking about in the weeks past. But can you give us a sense of what prompted this and what's going on there?
Well, quite frankly, the pandemic has made the challenge even greater. I prefer to not look at these as problems, but challenges that will then lead to opportunity. Don Wright, as you know, is a public servant first and foremost. He was the president of BCIT before he became my deputy minister. He's well regarded in the post-secondary world. He understands it. So I believe that this review, unlike previous reviews, will be embraced by university presidents and executives and boards of colleges and universities across the province, because this isn't being designed to make life more difficult for them. It's being designed to make life better for them so that they can assist us in meeting our economic plan objectives, which is training the 1 million people we're going to need for the jobs of the future. Don is well placed to do that work because he was on the ground floor of developing our economic plan with Minister Kahlon and others when he was in government. And now that he's returned to the private sector, he has the expertise, the understanding of government's objectives, as well as the challenges within the post-secondary sector. The loss of international students means that we have to look at how do we fund our post-secondary institutions to maximize the benefit to local learners, but also to utilize that world-class standing to attract international students. I was an international student myself in another jurisdiction. There's a benefit for people coming to a new place to learn. Many times they stay and put down roots and develop the industries and the technologies that will transform our economy going forward. So we want to be open to the world on our post-secondary side, but we also want to make sure that we're funding it in a way that will meet the needs of local learners. And I know, Ravi, you might want to talk a bit about that as well.
Thanks, Rob, for that question. And I'll just highlight that the Labour Market Outlook report, which was released 2 months ago, highlighted that we're expecting more than 1 million new job openings here in British Columbia over the next 10 years. Not only that, but we have to train about 650,000 young people to take up the opportunities in the coming years. But we also know that about 30% of the existing employment that we have in our economy will be completely different within 10 years. So not only is it training young people coming in, not only is it giving reskilling opportunities for new immigrants who arrive to be able to practice here, but it's also about supporting those that are either facing transitions because of climate change or facing it because of technological change. So our academic partners know that how we train and the imperative of what's coming is going to be very important, and how we fund our partners is very complex. It's hard for anyone to understand, and so we're just looking to find a way to streamline that process, working with them on how we can meet the needs of our economy going years ahead, and we know that's going to be a big task, and we know our partners are up for it.
Next question is from Lisa Eusda, City News.
Hi there, Premier. You talked about how well the province is doing economically recovering from COVID-19, but I'm wondering about the hospitalization aspect, and there's still, there's been consistently more than 250 people in hospital, and how long can that be sustained, and is that a concern going forward?
Obviously, the fact that COVID is still in the community and will be for the foreseeable future should be a concern to all British Columbians, and they need to be mindful of that. If they haven't had a booster shot, they should get in line for that. If they haven't been immunized, I encourage them to do so. Physical distancing, mask wearing, there's a range of tools that individuals have at their disposal, and they're no longer orders, but they are recommendations from public health. Minister Dix is confident that the capacity of our acute care facilities, our hospitals, is sufficient to meet the demand through COVID and other, of course, needs in the community. As more interactions, more people are out and about, there are more visits to emergency rooms to address issues of daily life. A slip and a fall could lead to a broken bone, or a puck to the head at a hockey game could lead to stitches. So, our system is now trying to manage what would be a full capacity community, I would put it. People are engaging in regular life again, and on top of that, we're continuing to have the need to hospitalize those that have contracted COVID-19. But the surge capacity still exists. Minister Dix and Dr. Henry have a pretty complex plan to manage that, and I would direct you to them for more details on that. But I'm confident, based on the briefings I get regularly from the two of them, that our hospitalizations are manageable. They continue to be at about the 250 level. ICU beds are being freed up. We're going to be with COVID for some time, and I don't want anyone to believe that this is over. We have challenges ahead, but we now have more tools to manage those, and most importantly, we have safe and effective vaccines, and I encourage people to follow up for their third dose if they haven't done so, and please, if you haven't been immunized, it's the right thing to do.
Follow up, Lisa?
Yeah, it's just with COVID, and you're saying it's not over, but I was out last night and I noticed that there's no sanitizer anywhere, and I certainly hear, and I'm sure you hear it a lot from a lot of people who are feeling left behind in this process who are feeling very vulnerable with everything being lifted. And I'm wondering, obviously you know about being vulnerable right now, so I'm wondering if you have anything to say to the people who are feeling, who are being compromised, who have other issues, who are feeling that they have been left behind in this and have been forgotten essentially by the processes to keep people safe from COVID-19.
Well, I'm going to do a little anecdote. I apologize to those who have pressing questions, but when you talk about hand sanitizers, I'm reminded of being at an event on the legislature lawn last summer when the case counts were very low and people were feeling a bit of confidence. The vaccines were arriving in large numbers, and there were a lot of people on the grounds of the legislature, all masked to be sure, and an individual came up to me and lunged in and shook my hand, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd shaken a hand. And I was a bit shocked, quite frankly. And as you know, politicians tend to shake a lot of hands, but this was the first one in over a year. And as the individual walked away, someone came over to me who had some pure, sanitizer product on a string around his neck, and he came up to me and said, "Squirt?" And I said, "Yeah, thank you very much." So I would say to those who feel vulnerable, carry hand sanitizer with you. And even if you don't, carry some in case you come upon someone who has to randomly shake a hand and would prefer to have hand sanitizer. In terms of people feeling unease, I get that, and I do as well to a degree because of my being compromised by the radiation treatments that I've just come through. But I do believe, I'm confident that the people around me have taken steps to protect themselves and me. And I'm going confidently into rooms. I was just at the Globe conference in a room full of people, and it's nice to see people again and be engaged in public dialogue face to face. We've made great strides on Zoom and other technologies, but there's nothing beats looking at someone, as I am right now, a room full of cameras and reporters who are nodding their heads or shaking them depending on the answer. That's feedback that helps us be better at what we're doing. But for those who are still concerned, I get that, and I appeal to those who are not to have respect for those who are still taking the steps to be comfortable in our civil society and getting back out into public again. Please be mindful to walk a mile in their shoes. You don't know their circumstances. Don't be critical. Be helpful. Be compassionate.
Next question is from Richard Zussman, Global News.
Premier, just to continue on that point, next, you mentioned feeling comfortable in this room, knowing those around you have done everything to protect themselves and to protect you. Next week, one of those measures will likely get eased, which is the vaccine card. Is it important to acknowledge as a province that we are in essence at endemic stage here, that individuals are making their own decision to protect themselves and should not count on government or those around them to protect them as well, that we are making this next step towards our own self-management here?
Well, I think you've answered your own question, Richard, but I have to say I fully agree with you, and I'm not going to give medical advice to British Columbians. Dr. Henry has been doing that ably for the past 2 years, and our approach as a government was to Minister Kahlon is focused on the task that he's been given. I've been focused on managing a range of issues as they come to me, knowing full well that Dr. Henry, Minister Dix, the BC Centre for Disease Control, public health officials across health authorities have been focused on keeping people safe, as they have done pre-pandemic and will as we come out of the pandemic. So I'm not in a position to say to declare endemic status as opposed to pandemic status. I'll leave that to those who are better equipped for that. But I do know that people are feeling more comfortable. They were exhausted, quite frankly, as you know, from the restrictions, but they understood and I think complied largely with the orders as they came forward, because they knew they came from a place of safety to not just individuals but to the entire community. And I'm confident that as we go through the spring and into the summer and then come into the respiratory season in the fall, that people will be mindful of the road we've been on, and we do not want to give up ground after 2 hard years of work together by throwing aside the good advice we've been given to this point. And I'll leave it to Dr. Henry to make pronouncements on where we are in terms of the pandemic.
Richard, do you have a follow-up? We lost Richard. Okay, next question. Lisa Cordasco, Vancouver Sun.
Thank you. Good morning, Premier and Minister Kahlon. I'd like to ask, will the BC Hydrogen Office consider only green hydrogen projects? And if not, why not?
Well, we're going to be looking at the whole continuum, and you're quite right. There's green hydrogen, there's blue hydrogen. We have an abundance of natural gas here, which would be the feedstock for blue hydrogen. We want to take a look at how we use our clean green electricity based on our reservoir systems across the province to make sure we're making the best decisions to meet our climate objectives. And that's going to be a mix, I'm confident, at the beginning. And as time goes by and technologies improve, we're going to see absolutely a shift to almost exclusively green hydrogen. But we don't want to foreclose on that innovation by making declarative statements at this early stage in the development of the strategy.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. So then how will the BC Hydrogen Office ensure that development is not ending up greenwashing for non-renewable energy companies?
Because that's not part of the plan. Thanks, Rob. The plan is to meet our 2030 and 2050 objectives. This isn't about greenwashing. This is about practical solutions in an energy-constrained environment as a result of events in the Ukraine. There's a lot of talk about expanding more noxious forms of energy production. That's a real concern to me, that at this stage, when we look at the challenges in Europe and the disruptions in the transformation from old technologies to new, that there will be those in the marketplace that say, well, we can't go too quickly because of this instability. I would suggest we need to go faster because of this instability. But I don't think at this stage, when we're just announcing the opening of a one-stop shop, a place to set up the regulatory framework for the future, that we should immediately discount any component part of that until we've got a better understanding of what that means long term. This is a strategy not to solve the problem tomorrow, but over the next number of years. And that's what governments are supposed to do, prepare for every eventuality, and most importantly, ensure that the tasks that we set for ourselves are consistent with where the community wants to go. And I'm fully aware of the need, based on the past 5 years of graphic weather events, that we need to take action, and British Columbians get that perhaps better than Canadians as a whole because of the experiences we've had since 2017.
Next question is from Nelson Bennett, Business in Vancouver.
Yeah, I just was wondering on the production side, I'm just wondering if you're aware of any major projects being proposed for BC, either on blue hydrogen or green hydrogen production, other than a renewable hydrogen Canada. That's Jürgen Puter's projects that he has proposed for Chetwynd. I'm just wondering if there are any other proposals that you're aware of.
Well, I am, and I'm not at liberty to share that with you, Nelson. I'm sorry. Why we wanted to launch the BC Hydrogen Office today is because we know there is a lineup of proposals, but they need a framework. They need to know what the policy initiatives that government are bringing forward are going to mean to their potential investments. So, and I apologize for not being able to be more forthright about those companies that are lining up, as I'm sure you're aware from your reporting, ready to go. And what we need to do as a government is make sure that foundation, that policy foundation, is in place, and the BC Hydrogen Office will be doing that in concert with other orders of government, municipalities, working with the federal government. We've got some exciting things to say on all of this, but today is not the day to do that.
We have Nelson. Do you have a follow-up?
The proposals, are they both green and blue hydrogen proposals?
Yes, yes. And I should also say that I've known Jürgen Puter for a decade and a half, and he has been on this issue for the whole time. And I'm delighted that the world has come to the place that Jürgen has been at for some considerable period of time. So I'm hopeful that his initiatives will get through and be fully financed. But our objective here is to make sure that the framework for participation in the hydrogen highway, or the hydrogen strategy here in British Columbia, is fair for everybody. And again, not wanting to pass judgment on green or blue, and for many people who won't understand what I'm even talking about, I leave it to the reporters here to write comprehensive stories about the difference.
We have time for one last question in the room. Please identify yourself.
I'm Monty Stewart, here today for Research Money. Premier Horgan. I'm just wondering, you heard during the session with Dr. Mazzucato, and you indicated that you would get SMEs more involved in the procurement process. Yeah. How do you plan to do that?
Well, we have done that by breaking up larger contracts, particularly for telcos, breaking up larger contracts into more digestible parts so that smaller enterprises can constructively put in bids for these RFPs. We're creating lists of small, medium, and large companies to participate as preferred bidders. So we're trying to break down what had been an increasing large market for large companies, trying to break these into digestible bits for smaller companies.
Also, just to follow up, Dr. Mazzucato made several recommendations during the session, and I'm just wondering now, how will you and your government follow up on those recommendations?
Well, we're receiving her report later this week. I'm going to ask Minister Kahlon to answer that, because he has been engaged with Dr. Mazzucato from the beginning. But as the head of the government, I just have to say that to have access to someone of her capacity and talent that's looked at the economy upside down, if you will, to what traditional economists have done, allows us to fit that into the continuum of ideas that are already existing here in British Columbia and find ways to ensure that we are inclusive as we go forward. And we're focusing on not just the traditional what are you doing in this sector, what are you doing in that sector, which is, of course, important for those sectors and important for the broader economy, but making sure that we're thinking about what the future holds rather than waiting for it to happen to us is, I think, what thinkers like Dr. Mazzucato gave us at the early stages of the development of the plan. And I'll let Ravi talk about how we're going to expand on her recommendations.
Great. Thank you for the question. Yeah, we're very excited, of course, to have Professor Mazzucato support us. I think it's important to highlight that the economic plan that we created, Stronger BC Plan, was built by and it was built for British Columbians. But of course, we're competitive here, and we want to make sure that we know what other jurisdictions are talking about, where they're going. And Professor Mazzucato was instrumental in providing us that insight of where other jurisdictions are moving to. That being said, we are expecting Professor Mazzucato and her team to release their report and recommendations for us later today. So I believe they'll be releasing that report today, and there will be some highlighted opportunities for us on how we can move forward. And we really welcome that advice, and it's going to be a cross-government initiative, and a lot of excitement within government to take a different perspective on economic growth than what we've done traditionally here in British Columbia.
That's all the time we have. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
And just one last comment. I just want to say that British Columbians have been waiting and hoping to assist Ukrainian refugees as they flee war in Europe. I want to say that by tomorrow afternoon, we will have stood up a 1-800 number if you want to help, if you want to assist, if you've got vacant space in your home to help people who will be coming from Ukraine to British Columbia and to Canada. That 1-800 number will be active later tomorrow, and we'll have more to say about our plans in that regard down the road. But I know all British Columbians are watching anxiously the events in Europe, and as always are ready to help those who have been displaced by war and violence. So thank you, BC, for caring, and there's lots more to do.